I still remember the night Vera stood in my kitchen doorway, wearing a sweater 2 sizes too big. Her arms crossed over her chest like she was holding herself together. She looked at me for a long time before she said it. I don't think I'm someone a man wants anymore. Not like she was fishing for a compliment. Not like she needed me to argue. She said it the way you say something you have already decided is true. But it started a few weeks before that. It started on a Tuesday in October, when my cousin Bridget called while I was under the hood of a '98 Silverado at the garage. Don't be weird about this, she said. I wiped my hands on a shop rag. Good morning, Bridget. Vera's coming back to Kelowna. She's staying with her mom for a while. I hadn't heard Vera Calloway's name out loud in almost a year. Not since the Christmas card her mother sent with a note tucked inside saying Vera was doing well, which was Kelowna speak for please don't ask follow-up questions. I leaned against the truck. Is she okay? Bridget got quiet in that specific way she had when the answer was no, and she didn't want to be the one to say it. She had a surgery, the serious kind, and things with Derek are over. I didn't say anything. I'm not asking you to do anything, Bridget said. I just know your face. She was right about that. I had a face that talked before I did. I first met Vera when we were both 19. The summer Bridget dragged me to a backyard party in the South Pandosi neighborhood, and Vera Calloway was already there, sitting on a cooler, winning an argument about hockey with 2 guys who looked like they had been arguing about hockey their whole lives. She was sharp and loud and had a laugh that turned heads from across the yard. She became Bridget's closest friend by the end of that summer, which meant she was always around, always borrowing things, always in the middle of whatever was happening, and always perfectly willing to tell me when I was wrong. Then she got the job in Vancouver, got serious with Derek, moved west and became the kind of person who existed in Bridget's stories and the occasional group chat notification. I saw Sophie that afternoon. Vera. I saw Vera that afternoon outside her mother's house on Lakeshore Road, standing beside a row of cardboard boxes on the front steps like she was figuring out which ones had earned the right to come inside. Her hair was shorter than I remembered. She had on an oversized flannel jacket and dark jeans and one hand pressed against her ribs, almost absently, like a habit she hadn't noticed herself forming. When my truck pulled up, she looked over. Well, she called out, if it isn't Kelowna's most reliable errand boy. I got out and looked at the boxes. You need a hand, or are you just supervising the property? I was waiting for someone with better posture and fewer opinions. Bridget sent me. I know. You think I couldn't tell the difference between a volunteer and a conscript? For 1 second she was exactly who I remembered, quick and dry and pleased with herself. Then a car slowed at the corner and she turned her face toward the house and the moment closed like a door. I carried boxes, she directed. That one goes in the back room. You said the hallway. I said near the hallway. There's a difference. The hallway is the hallway, Vera. And yet here we are, having a conversation about it. Her mother made tea and asked me about the garage and I said things were fine, which was also Kelowna speak for please don't ask follow-up questions. Vera sat at the kitchen table with her hands around her mug and let the conversation happen around her, which was unusual. The Vera I knew had never let a conversation happen without her. Later, I helped her move a small bookcase upstairs. She reached for one end out of habit, and I hesitated just for a second. She caught it. I can carry a shelf, Cam. I know. Then stop making that face. I picked up my end. Bridget said if you overdo it, I'm the one who hears about it. Convenient excuse. Extremely. She let me take the heavier side. Over the next couple of weeks I found reasons to stop by. Not in an obvious way. I fixed the back gate latch that had been sticking since 2019. I swapped out a light switch in the hallway that buzzed when you turned it on. Small things. Things with clear answers. Vera would make a comment from the doorway. Something about my technique or the quality of my tools or the fact that I narrated my work under my breath, and it almost felt like the old rhythm. Almost. But there were tells. Loose layers even on the warm afternoons we got that October. Long sleeves. A way she had of sitting sideways in chairs so her left side faced the wall. A pause before she laughed, like she was checking first whether it was okay. I didn't say anything about it. I just noticed. Then one evening I was driving back from a job in Rutland, and I took the long way without really deciding to. And I passed her mother's house and saw Vera on the front porch. She had a blanket over her shoulders and a glass of red wine in her hand, and she was sitting in the dark section of the porch, just past where the porch light reached, staring at the lake. She looked like someone who had been alone on purpose for long enough that she'd forgotten it was a choice. I pulled over. You're lost, she said from the porch. Short through a residential street with a dead end. Scenic shortcut. I walked up the front path slowly. Nice night. You don't have to do that. Do what? The drop-in, the checking in. I'm fine. I sat on the porch railing, far enough away that she had room. I know. She looked at my empty hands. You didn't bring anything. I wasn't planning this, that's poor service. I went back to the truck and came back with a bottle of Okanagan Red I'd bought for Bridget's birthday and kept forgetting to drop off. I also had 2 paper coffee cups in the door pocket because that was what I had. Vera looked at the cups. Classy, full-service operation. I poured and handed her one. She held it with both hands, the blanket pulled tight around her. The lake was calm and dark and there was enough of a wind off the water that the trees at the edge of the yard were moving. Someone a few houses down had a fire going and you could smell it. We didn't say much for a while. That had always been one of the things I liked about Vera, even back when we were younger. She could run her mouth at 40 miles an hour, but she also knew how to sit in quiet when she trusted the person beside her. Eventually she said, "Can I ask you something?" "Yeah, promise me you'll answer like a person and not like someone trying to manage my feelings." "I'll try. Cam, I'll try, Vera." That's an honest answer. She looked at the cup in her hands. Her nails were short, no polish. She had a small scar on the back of her left hand I didn't remember from before. "When you look at me now," she said, "what do you see?" I didn't answer right away. It would have been easy to say something smooth, something reassuring that cost me nothing and meant even less. But Vera hadn't asked a smooth question. She was asking whether everything that had happened to her was visible now, the way a crack in a wall is visible once you know it's there. "I see, Vera," I said. She let out a small breath through her nose. "That's the answer people give when they want to be kind." "I'm not finished," she went still. "I see the woman who showed up here and on day 1 corrected me about which side of the hallway a bookcase goes. I see someone who makes Bridget's mom laugh every time she calls. I see someone who is carrying something heavy and still hasn't asked anyone to put it down for her." I paused. "I see that you're tired. I see that something happened to you that changed things, and I see that you're not ready to talk about it, and that's okay. But I don't see damage when I look at you. That's not the first thing." She stared at the lake for a long moment. Then quietly, "Derek did." I kept still. "Not right away," she said. "He came to appointments. He said everything right. He held my hand in waiting rooms and called my mom with updates and bought me books I'd mentioned months earlier. He was good at being a good boyfriend when there was an audience." Her voice stayed even but her grip on the cup changed. "Then things got slower. I got tired in ways I couldn't explain. I couldn't sleep through the night. I hated being alone. I was difficult. I know I was difficult." She said that part almost as an apology to someone who wasn't there. "He started taking longer at the gym. Coming home after I was already in bed. He stopped touching me unless I reached for him first. And when he did, it was like he was being careful about something. Careful in a way that had nothing to do with how I felt and everything to do with how he felt." I looked down at the porch boards. "Don't do the thing," she said. "What thing?" "Where you get angry and suddenly I'm the one making sure you're okay." That landed. She was right. I kept my mouth shut. The worst part wasn't him leaving. She took a sip of wine. I thought it would be. I built it up in my head as the worst part, but it wasn't. She set the cup on the porch railing, slow and careful. One night, I got up to get water and I heard him on the back balcony. On the phone with his brother. He didn't know I was awake. She stopped. He said he still cared about me. He said he felt guilty. He said he knew what I'd been through. Her voice dropped, and then he said he didn't know how to be attracted to me anymore. That it felt different now. That he didn't know how to explain it. The porch went quiet. I heard the wind in the trees, the far-off sound of someone's screen door. The small sound Vera made when she exhaled through her nose, slow and controlled, like she'd had a lot of practice not falling apart in front of other people. There are things you want to say in a moment like that. Loud things. Things that feel useful because anger is easier than sitting with helplessness. But Vera wasn't telling me because she needed a reaction. She had already lived the worst of it. She didn't need my noise on top of it. "That's about him," I said. "Not you." She laughed once, but there was nothing light in it. "I know that. Knowing it doesn't touch the part of you it already got into. I had nothing for that." She was right. I set my cup down on the railing. "I'm not Derek." She looked at me then, and something moved across her face that I couldn't name exactly. "I know," she said. "That's half the problem." Something shifted in the air between us. She looked away first, toward the water, but I'd already seen it. The wanting. The fear that ran underneath the wanting like a current. I stood up, her shoulder tensed. "Where are you going?" "Home." Her face closed in a way that was hard to watch. "With you if you want," I said. "You're cold and I don't think you've eaten." She looked at me. "You have food?" "I have groceries." "That's not an answer. I can make soup." "Real soup. Not from a can." She stared at me for another second. Then she stood up, tucked the blanket under her arm and said, "You're going to burn it." "Probably." 15 minutes later she was sitting at my kitchen counter, in Kelowna's only apartment that smelled like wood stain and motor oil, watching me chop onions with the particular scrutiny of someone who had decided this was entertainment. "Your knife grip is wrong," she said. "My knife grip is fine. You're going to take off a finger. I have been cooking for 29 years without losing a finger, Vera. Statistically, the odds are catching up." I laughed before I could stop myself. She looked pleased about that, not in a big way. Just a small flash. Like something that had been off for a while had briefly switched back on. I made lentil soup with whatever I had. Carrots, tinned tomatoes, a Parmesan rind my mother had told me to keep in the freezer for exactly this kind of thing. It wasn't a recipe, it was just what happened when I put things in a pot and paid attention. Vera sat at the counter with her wine replaced by water and her socks on the bottom rung of the bar stool and made comments like a color commentator for a sport nobody had asked her to cover. "You're stirring too much. You can't oversit a soup. I'm pretty sure you can. Name one time. I'm not your culinary research assistant." I put a bowl in front of her. She took one spoonful, then another. Then she looked at the bowl and didn't say anything for a moment. "Well?" I asked. "It's decent. High praise. Don't push it." She ate most of the bowl. The kitchen was warm from the stove, and I had the radio going on low. Some station that played things from the 90s without apologizing for it. Vera sat with her shoulders relaxed for the first time since I'd known her again this fall, her feet tucked up on the stool rung, and for a while she looked less like someone managing a careful performance and more like a person in a kitchen. Then she set her spoon down. I saw it happen. The shift. The way her eyes moved to the dark window above the sink, caught something in the glass, and dropped away fast. I turned slightly, giving her an easy out from whatever had just come up in her. She didn't take it. Instead she sat very still and said, "Can I show you something?" The radio kept playing. The pot was still warm on the back burner. "You don't have to," I said. "I know." Her answer came before I'd finished the sentence. "That's why I'm asking." She was sitting straight on the stool, hands flat on the counter, and the careful expression she'd been wearing for weeks had dropped. Not into sadness exactly. Into something more honest than that. "Sophie?" "Vera," I said. I'd said the wrong name, she noticed. "Who's Sophie?" she asked. "Nobody. Sorry, Vera." She gave me a look that meant we'd come back to that, but she let it go. "I haven't shown anyone," she said. "My mom has seen it. My surgeon, that's it." I stayed where I was, near the counter. "You don't owe me anything." "I know." She said it like she was tired of being given ramps to back out. "I know where the door is, Cam. I'm asking." I nodded. She slid off the stool, and in that moment I understood she was scared in a way that had nothing to do with me specifically and everything to do with the last person who had stood where I was standing. She lifted the hem of her sweater just enough. On her left side, below her ribs, there was a long scar. Surgical, clean, still newer looking than the rest of her skin. She held the fabric there and looked at my face and didn't say anything. I won't pretend I knew the exact right thing to do. I was standing in my own kitchen being given something that took a kind of courage I wasn't sure I had a name for yet. So I looked long enough to understand what she was trusting me with, and then I looked at her face. Her eyes were on mine like she was waiting for something to change in them. I saw her swallow. "Derek saw me after," she said. "He said it was fine. He said all the right things." Her voice was barely above a breath, and then he stopped looking. "Write in the comments, do you think Vera was wrong to let Derek's fear become the story she told herself about her own body? Or is that kind of wound almost impossible not to carry when someone you loved made you feel like a before and after?" I didn't answer right away. I knew that mattered. There's a version of comfort that's really just panic in a better outfit. Quick words thrown over the wound. "No, that's not true. You're beautiful. Don't say that." None of that was wrong exactly, but none of it would reach the part of her Derek had already gotten into. I took a slow step toward her. She didn't move back. I took another, and stopped with enough space between us that she could still breathe. "I see you," I said, her mouth pressed together. "I'm not saying it because I feel bad for you. I'm not saying it because I want to be the guy who says the right thing and then goes home and feels good about it." I kept my voice low. "I see you. The version who argues about soup technique. The version who had Bridget's mom crying laughing on the phone last week. The version who came back here after the worst year of her life and still corrects people's shelf placement." One tear slid down her face. She wiped it away immediately, almost irritated. "You haven't seen all of it," she said. "I don't need a full inventory to know who I'm talking to." "That's easy to say." "Yeah, I didn't argue that. What happened to you wasn't fair. What Derek said wasn't fair. And you standing here letting his fear become the last word on your body, that's not fair either." I paused. "Your body is not an apology. It's not a warning label. It doesn't make you less of a woman, and it doesn't make you less wanted." She made a small sound and pressed her lips together hard. I held out my hand, palm up, just that. She looked at it for a moment. Then she took it. Her fingers were cold. She held on like she was annoyed at herself for needing to. I pulled her just slightly closer, slow enough to stop. You showed me the thing you were most afraid to show, I said. And I'm still here. That was what broke her. Not loudly. Vera wasn't the kind of person who made a scene out of falling apart. She just pressed her forehead against my shoulder. And then the tears came, quiet, exhausted. The kind that have been waiting behind a very controlled face for a long time. I put my arms around her. Not carefully. Firmly. Like she was someone worth holding properly. There's a difference, and I hoped she felt it. She cried for a while. I didn't move. One hand between her shoulder blades. The soup getting cold on the stove. The radio still going low. I just held her until the shaking stopped and her breathing slowed and she came back from wherever Derek's voice had been keeping her. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and a little angry, which was the most like herself she'd looked all night. I hate doing that, she said. I know, I don't do that in front of people. I noticed. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater and looked at the half-empty bowl on the counter. The soup's cold, I'll reheat it. She stood there for a moment, then said, I don't want to go back tonight. Then don't. She looked up. I don't want you to think, Vera, I have a guest room. It has a bed and a window, and I think one box of cabinet hardware on the floor that I can move. She stared at me. Cabinet hardware? I was reorganizing. In the guest room. The system makes sense if you understand the system. She shook her head slowly. You are such a specific kind of person. The guest room is clean. Nobody's going to ask you to be okay in there. That's all I'm saying. She looked at me for a long time. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. I found her a toothbrush still in the package from a value pack I'd bought at Costco, and a clean towel from the hall closet. She slept with the door halfway open, which I understood. Privacy but not silence, not totally alone. I took the couch. I lay there under the spare blanket staring at the ceiling long after the apartment went quiet. And I understood that once you've said I see you to someone at the bottom of their worst year and meant it, you cannot walk it back. Not honestly. I wouldn't have wanted to. In the morning, I woke up with a stiff neck and one arm that had gone completely numb. I sat up too fast and knocked my water glass off the coffee table. From the kitchen, I heard that. Vera was standing at the counter in the sweater she'd worn the night before, holding the carton of oat milk I bought because real milk gave me trouble, reading the back panel like it had done something to her. You own oat milk, she said, but no decent cereal. Good morning. There's granola from like 2022 in the back of your cupboard. That's an artisanal granola. Cam, the bag is stale. It's sealed. It's expired. She set the carton down and turned around. Her face was cleaner in the morning, not in a looks better way, in a has-been washed way. Less held together. More herself. Do you have eggs? Yes. Do you know what to do with eggs? I've been told my eggs are confident. She looked at me. That's not a compliment. I'm aware. I made eggs. They were scrambled and seasoned and probably fine. Vera sat on the bar stool and ate without commentary for almost 2 full minutes, which was the longest she'd ever gone. Then she set her fork down. Do you remember what you said last night? I poured coffee. Yes. All of it? Yes. She looked at her plate, picked at the cuff of her sweater. Did you mean it? It wasn't a question the way she said it. Yes. She looked up. That you wanted me. Yes, not because you felt bad. No, not because you wanted to be the person who fixed things. Vera. She stopped. I came around the counter and stood across from her, not too close. I meant it, all of it. I'm not good at saying things I don't mean. You've known me long enough to know that. She looked at me. If I believe you, she said carefully. And then one day things shift, the way they shifted with Derek. She stopped. Swallowed. I don't know what that would do to me. I know. I just don't want to say it out loud. I understood that. I wanted to promise her I'd be different in every way, that I'd never fail her, never run out of patience, never let her down. But promises like that sound the best right before they don't hold. I can't promise I'll get it right every time, I said. I can promise I'll be honest. I can promise I'll tell you when something is hard instead of going quiet about it. I can promise I'm not standing here thinking about a version of you that existed before this year. That's not who I want. Her jaw moved. She was fighting something back. Can we go slow? She asked. I renovate furniture for a living, I said. Slow is the only speed I have. That got a real laugh. Small, exhaled, but real, so we went slow. She still came by. Except now she stayed longer. She'd sit on the kitchen counter while I worked on whatever project was taking up my dining tables. A cedar hope chest I was refinishing for a client in West Kelowna. A set of maple chairs from an estate sale that needed all their joints re-glued. And she'd offer opinions nobody requested. That stain's too dark. It's the color they asked for. They asked for walnut, not the inside of a mine. Those are the same, they are categorically not the same. She looked things up on her phone to prove me wrong. Half the time she was right. I didn't tell her that until much later. Some evenings I walked her back to her mother's. We'd take the long way along the water and talk about things that had nothing to do with Derek or surgery or the year she'd had. We talked about Bridget's complete inability to parallel park. About her mom's new obsession with a specific brand of herbal tea she ordered from a company in PEI. About my most recent client who wanted rustic but also refined, which is designer speak for I don't know what I want but I'll know when it's wrong. Slowly she stopped checking every window she walked past. 2 weeks later I asked her to dinner. Bridget had been in my ear about it long enough that I'd started sleeping badly, which told me what I already knew. I showed up at her mother's door, with flowers from the market on Bernard Avenue. Tulips, because Bridget had said Vera liked them, and I had believed this piece of intelligence enough to act on it. Vera opened the door, saw the tulips, and her face did something complicated. "Bridget, I make my own choices. She texted you to bring flowers. I can tell by how nervous you look. I look confident. You look like a man who has been coached." She took the tulips anyway, smelled them. Then she looked up at me and the complicated expression settled into something softer. "They're pretty," she said. "Yeah. So are you going to say it?" "Say what?" "You know what? You look good, Vera." She looked down once, breathed once. Then she nodded a little, like she was accepting something. "Thank you," she said, and meant it. We went to a restaurant on the water in downtown Kelowna, a small Italian place that Bridget had recommended, because the tables were far enough apart that you could have a conversation without performing it. Nobody there knew our history. Nobody looked at Vera like she was a story they'd already been told. They just saw a woman at dinner, slightly overdressed for October, correcting her date's pronunciation of something on the menu. "It's bruschetta," she said. "Not bruschetta. I've been saying it wrong for 30 years. 30 years is a long time to be wrong." After dinner we walked along the waterfront. The lake was black and still, and the lights from the boardwalk made long lines across the water. I kept my hands in my jacket pockets because I wasn't going to assume anything. Halfway to the car, Vera reached over and took my hand. Her fingers slid between mine, careful at first, then firmer. "I thought tonight was going to feel like too much," she said. I looked over. "Did it?" "No." She laughed a little, almost embarrassed. "It felt like dinner." Which sounds wrong, but it's what I wanted. Normal, like I'm just a person on a date. I stopped walking. She stopped too. I didn't move right away. I waited until she looked at me, until she gave the smallest possible nod. More of a settling, really, a decision landing in her face. Then I kissed her, quiet, unhurried, not making a point. Just standing on the waterfront in October with cold hands and the sound of the lake behind us. When we pulled apart, she touched her fingers to her mouth. "New memory," she said. "New memory," I said. After that, we made more of them. The first time she wore a jacket that fit, that didn't cover anything and didn't apologize for it. The first time she let me take her picture in front of the lake on a Sunday morning, laughing at something I'd said, her coffee in one hand. The first time she fell asleep on my couch, watching something on TV and didn't bolt awake, embarrassed about it. Then came the afternoon Derek called. We were at the kitchen table. She was helping me sketch measurements for a bookcase commission, and I was explaining why her proportions were slightly off, and she was explaining why I was wrong, when her phone buzzed screen up and we both saw the name. She went still. I waited. The phone buzzed again. She picked it up, looked at his name for a long moment, long enough that I thought she might answer, and then she pressed decline. Set it face down on the table, breathed out. "I don't want to give him today," she said. So we went back to the bookcase. I pointed out where her measurements were off. She told me I was reading the tape wrong. We argued about it for 10 minutes, and she was technically correct. Vera didn't become the person she'd been before. That was never the point. She was changed, and some of the change was permanent, and some days that was heavier than others. Some mornings were easy and some weren't. There were still moments when a mirror caught her wrong or a thoughtless comment landed somewhere it shouldn't have, but she laughed more. She wanted things and said so. She stopped holding herself at half volume in rooms where she'd once filled them completely. I loved that woman, not a memory of her, not a before version I was waiting for her to return to. Her funny, stubborn, occasionally infuriating, careful in some places and wide open in others. I think about that night sometimes, the kitchen, the cold soup, the way she stood under the overhead light and showed me the things she'd been most afraid to show someone and watched my face for the moment it would close. It didn't close. That's where we started. Not with a grand gesture, not with the right words at the right time, just with a man standing in his own kitchen, staying where he was. And a woman deciding that was enough to build something on.